Well, hello.
Hey there. I feel like I haven't seen you in so long, my love.
I know. It's been a minute. You were out of town, and then we were trying to. Then I think I was out of town or something like that, and child, we were
Yeah.
trying to coordinate these schedules, honey. Coordinate these schedules. How have you been doing, sir?
Being fat, Wingstop.
Child, whatever.
I've been great though. As you know, privately, there have been some things that I've gone through that, was not so great at first, but then recently there's been some phenomenal things that have happened
Yes.
in my world. And so, the radio waves, the
Listen, that's the
cycles.
life. Listen, that is the circle of life. Okay, as Mufasa told us. Now, welcome everybody back to the Teacher Project 2.0. I am your co-host, Really BTV, along with Dr. L Teddy 27. Lord have mercy. I don't know why I couldn't get that out. Anyway, and we are back to talk to you about all things education. Now, the title of today's show is How Do We Teach About Racism? And Biden's first 100 days. What's your grade for him? So we'll be getting into those topics among a few other odds and ends as we go through. So I want to thank you guys for being here. Welcome back, anybody who is new. And all of our regulars. I see some already in here. Quintessential Below Cams. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hey,
So
everyone.
we're going to start today off. We're going to start off there. This is an article that I found, and it's very interesting because actually it's the picture that they use for the article is from a school here in DC that I'm very familiar with, Cardozo High School here in DC. And this article is in reference to infrastructure in our country. So I'm just going to read you. This is from educationweek.com. So, and this is dated April the 27th, 2021. So you guys will know this is a pretty recent article. A high school in Pennsylvania has leaky pipes and broken fire alarms. The ceiling collapsed at an empty elementary school in Connecticut, causing it to flood. A public pre-K facility in North Carolina found lead in its water fountains and faucets. These are just a handful of recent examples that illustrate the woefully inadequate condition of many of America's public school buildings, insufficient and inequitable public investment, growing nationwide K through 12. Millions of students learning in buildings that are unsafe and overcrowded. Now, this is something we know has been going on for years. I'll read a little bit more and then we'll talk about it. A wide body of academic research has shown that lawmakers' inability to maintain school buildings has led to lower academic outcomes for students and lower well-being for the teachers and administrators who spend long periods of time in those buildings. President Joe Biden is proposing a $100 billion federal investment in K through 12 school building infrastructure as part of his $2 trillion spending package that also includes funds for electrifying school buses, expanding broadband access, and eliminating the nation's lead pipes. Congress is poised to vote on the proposal in the upcoming month. And again, the article goes on. Y'all know we don't read the whole article here. I will put the link. I generally try to get the link ahead of time, but the link will be added. But again, this came from Education Week, and it is dated April the 21st. So, first of all, let me say this. Well, actually, let me defer to you, El Teddy. What has your experience been in reference to infrastructure and things of that nature?
Um, the districts that I've worked in, the district I worked in the longest being Miami-Dade, that was a big problem. I would say 15 years ago, especially amongst the older schools, and you being a historian knows a lot of money in infrastructure for the country was done mid 20th century,
Mm-hmm.
50s, 60s, around that time. So we're
And
talking about major interstates
yeah, a lot of these
and
schools.
schools.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of school buildings.
In the 1960s.
Mhm. So
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about the highways as well as
Yeah.
a lot of schools
Mm-hmm.
and older like federal courthouses and office buildings. They were built in and around that time. The problem is there was no updates, and monies and administrations, federal administrations did not put money into infrastructure because they were allocating monies other places. So what
Mhm.
ends up happening is you have 50 to 60 years worth of deterioration
Mhm.
on these things, and there's nothing being done. Now I've heard the administration talk about bridges and other things like that, where a lot of traffic happens, and them wanting to um, to put money into that infrastructure with the road, some of the roads, interstates, and bridges and so forth that had not been updated since that time. But you don't hear them saying anything about these school buildings. Mind you, we were well into some places the 2000s before some schools got rid of asbestos. And so that's how that this is the nature of the things that we're talking about. And so when I looked at the article and I started to look at some of the alarming numbers, we're talking about there were alarming numbers, and that I just really didn't realize and wasn't privy to. But just alarming numbers. Now it goes into I'll and I'm gonna put this out there now, let you go from here. When we started to see some of the what happened in Miami-Dade County, where I was maybe about 15 years ago, they started to rebuild some of the older schools. So a lot of the older black schools and stuff like that. While it was necessary, when it actually happened, there was a little bit of pushback because they came in and it was like, we knocking everything down. We just gonna build a whole new edifice and a whole new building. And so when you have decades of alumni who went to this school, and that's where they grew up, that the whole structure of the building became home. They conceived some children in parts of those schools and all of that stuff. It kind of made the alumni go, wait, we didn't know it was gonna happen like that. And so, but it happened, and we still love our schools and whatnot. But that's one of those things that we didn't um account for because we didn't know that we were really attached to the actual building itself, because you do get attached to the building itself. And so that's part of it. It'd be like somebody going to your college and saying, we're gonna knock everything down and we're gonna build a whole new. And some colleges are doing that, like they're rebuilding dorms, and so forth, and rebuilding whole buildings where it doesn't necessarily look like it did perhaps when you were in school. I don't know if at Bennett they've been doing that, but I know in Tallahassee and both FAMU and Florida State, they're doing the same thing at those colleges and universities where they'll tear down a whole dormitory, or they'll tear down a whole, journalism building and rebuild it in the same place, but it has a different look, feel, aesthetic, and it kind of changed, because you do get attached to, structures and edifices.
Mhm. I know for myself. So the answer to Bennett right now, no, we need to. That I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, I know I love Bennett, but I'm gonna be honest here. The last time I went to Bennett and I did a tour of the campus, which was maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and I did a tour of the campus. I literally walked away in tears because some of the dorms were in. I mean, and those dorms were closed. I mean, they weren't open, but they were in such bad shape. And at that point, Bennett was struggling to just stay open. So it wasn't a whole what you're going to say when the school is struggling to just stay open. And you guys may remember that whole, stand with Bennett movement where we had to raise all this money and all that, and we were getting ready to lose our accreditation. Thank God we're in a much better place now. But in that moment, to have to see that, it was a very disheartening thing for me. To speak on my education, my experience in teaching, and y'all, for as much as I can't stand this woman, she ends up in a whole lot of my stories. When that's one of the things that won Michelle Rhee a lot of accolades when she came to DC, because she made the schools look pretty. Her big push when she was here was renovation. And because she was the darling of America at the time, she was getting the money to do it. She was getting grants, she was getting donations, the Gates Foundation, the Koch brothers. She was getting a lot of money, and she was on a blitz. I want to say all of DC public schools, either, well, I don't want to say all. I'm going to say 80% because it was the majority. Either got a full renovation or were totally rebuilt. And so for a lot of people, we like shiny things. And so it made people feel good, like, oh my goodness, look at my brand new school in my neighborhood. Well, it must be a better school because it looks good. And so that's something that, because it wasn't all of the schools in DC. A lot of them, though. A lot of schools got makeovers. And even if they didn't get full blown, they got stuff on the inside that made it look pretty. We painted, we put, brighter lighting in, something that made it look better and different. And so I don't want to knock the fact that she did do that. But the problem is, like you said, so many of the schools had been not taken care of for so long that it was sort of like putting duct tape. You know what I'm saying? It was sort of like putting duct tape on it. And the reality of the situation is, oh Lord.
Right. I just got a notification too, like, dear God. Oh God.
Catch it on the replay. I'm sorry, y'all. So for
we both got a notification at the same time.
So my experience has been pretty much any school I worked at needed the renovation, needed the infrastructure. And like even the school I'm working now, literally they're patching it together because we were slated to get a brand new building. Like they were going to knock the building down that we're currently in, and they were going to build a whole new building. I'm actually, last school year was supposed to be that first year of the new building, and it keeps getting pushed back because other schools are having emergencies where like one school, they had to replace the whole HVAC system. Like another school, they had to do something with the pipes. And so because of the infrastructure being so bad across the board, they can't even get to this school. I mean, like we actually had plans and was meeting with architects, and my principal was telling us what our classrooms were. I mean, it had gotten that far in the process where we had the prototype of the building, and, he wasn't buying new things for the school because he was like, well, I'm not going to buy anything new here because we're going to be in a new building. It gotten that far. And now it's all of a sudden like, oh, well, we don't know when y'all going to get a new school now. But our school has been there since the 60s. Like literally, it's one of those schools you were talking about. So this summer, I keep thinking summer. While we was out for COVID, they literally right, I'm thinking summer. They literally tore up the floor in two of the major hallways of my building because there was something with the pipes underneath. And I'm like, so how much money did you just spend on a school that you plan on tearing down in another year or two? But they had to. They had to do it. Because that's
and the thing about it, but the thing about it is you're talking about also buildings that were not built and structured for even the technology we have. They were not built to sustain all of the innovative technologies, even just within each individual classroom with Promethean board. We ain't gonna even go down that road, and then we're not gonna even include.
How many
we're
times
not gonna even
circuit breaker, child. I don't even want to talk about how many times
we're not gonna even include what they need to do for now, because let's be clear. Although we are talking about COVID restrictions, some of these things are going to be perpetual with regard to the classroom. And so it's just not, they were not built for that. And so the monies that, and we'll get to the monies later that's being put into schools by this administration, but when they talk about passing an infrastructure bill, I really need to, and I have it, and that's my negligence, but I really want to go into that infrastructure bill that Biden is passing and see how much of that infrastructure bill does go to and is allocated toward schools, to know whether or not they are going to be addressing these issues. Because when you look at those numbers, and the article, I'm glad we used that article because it allows you to go state by state, and you can click on your state and look and see where your state is with regard to the infrastructure of the schools. And it may sound very trivial, but it
Go ahead.
won't be trivial when there's a halt to your child's education. It,
Yeah. Yeah.
it won't be trivial then.
Nope, it's not. So yeah, I mean, and this is like you said, we'll get to that a little bit in a moment when we get to, you know, rating Biden his first 100 days. We'll get to that in a moment. But again, that's something when you start looking at your children's school, it's real what they say about when we talk about the lead pipes and the quality. One of the things that we've talked about in my building is the air quality. Because those vents, like when is the last time they cleaned the vents in our building? We were talking about going back as far as COVID. They were supposed to do an air quality assessment in every single school building. Interestingly enough, the one on our building we can't find. So did you not do it, or were the results so bad that you didn't want to publish them? You see what I'm saying? Anyway, so yeah, so we're gonna definitely revisit it, because my thing is this, and I know this is gonna sound, some of y'all might feel like this is selfish what I'm saying, but I feel like this. How about in this last year that the buildings have been closed? That would have been a great time to do some of this stuff. That'd have been a really good.
Yeah, but you making way too much sense.
Clearly,
way too much sense. It does not pay to make sense sometimes.
Child. So, all right. Well, let's get into now. El Teddy and myself have both spoken about what we're getting ready to get into individually on our personal YouTube channels. So we're going to drop into, have you noticed a trend with refurbishment to leave funds for newer textbooks? Because I've seen brand new buildings loaded with textbooks older than me.
Well, that's another part, because that textbook adoption is supposed to happen. That's an ongoing thing. That's supposed to happen every so many years. Like your child should clearly not be having the same textbook that you had when you were in school. Standards have changed, and every state and district, every state I know has rules with regard to textbook adoption, and there are committees put in place and all kinds. So if your child is still working with that, there's something going terribly wrong. Terribly wrong.
And that's definitely something. And see, here's what I'm going to say to anyone in this room who is not just a parent, but also a stakeholder. And what I mean by a stakeholder is, if you live in a neighborhood that has a school, you have a right to go into that building. You have a right to ask for certain documentation that, well, I know I'm going to speak for DC and Maryland. You have a right to ask for certain documentation. You have a right to go to the PTA meetings. You have a right to that information. So it's not just about you being invested in a school because you have a child that goes to that school, but you are also vested in what your neighborhood is. What type of students is your neighborhood school producing? If it is a public school, you have a right. Every school should have an improvement plan, a school improvement plan. And that school improvement plan should be visible or available, I should say, to anyone who is a stakeholder. And the definition of stakeholder, if you live in the neighborhood, if you have a business in that neighborhood, so even if you don't live in that neighborhood, but you own a business in that neighborhood, and certainly if you are a parent of a child. And so you have a right to say, wait a minute, my child's textbooks, I'm looking at the copyright date. The last president was Reagan. Like, I need, like, right. You have a right to go into that school and ask questions. Of course, just like anything else, you want to be respectful about how you enter the building, and you want to, maybe ask to have a meeting with the principal to sit down and go over those things. Like, I would just barge in and start demanding, but you do have a right. Now, I would bone up on state law for where you live, because like I said, I can speak for DC, I can speak for Maryland, but most states have something similar to that. The language may be a little different, but the sentiment is the same, that you as a stakeholder have a right to access to what the school is doing in that community. And again,
part of that did come when nickel became in and so forth. That was a part of the huge, we talk about that so often, that George W. Bush was probably one of the most influential presidents with regard to education, because it changed a lot of the game. So that's when school improvement plans came in. That's when you had to have advisory councils that included the all of the stakeholders that had members of the student body, the faculty, the administration, custodial, parents, business owners, and all of those things that were also attached to and had some say in what the school was doing. So all but yeah, those things are in place, and I definitely will look into it.
That's a good question below, but the answer is no. The question is, haven't most school systems converted to digital textbooks? The answer is no. Again, most of the newer textbooks have digital
Both.
versions.
Yeah, they have both where it's dual.
Right. But because, especially prior to COVID, because so many school systems did not have the infrastructure to guarantee that students would have access to the textbook from home, there's still hard copies available. Now, most, especially if you're buying a new textbook now, there absolutely is that option. But again, what we have to keep in mind is how much money does a school district have to buy and spend on it, because when you start getting into those different versions, there's a dollar amount with that as well.
And but it also goes into the infrastructure of that school now. Many of the districts that I've worked in at this point, all of the high school students have access to some type of laptop, tablet, or something other where every student in the building, whether or not your parents can afford it or not, you can rent out or check out your own laptop and things. And so what happens is when once they put those things in place, then I have seen those districts start to move more toward the digital.
Yeah.
But they do still with the digital textbook, they have to still keep a certain amount, not a full maybe class set in some cases, but they do have a certain number of physical textbooks just in case there's a problem with technology.
Yeah, I know for us, we have brand new US history books, and we have the digital and we have the textbook. And what I usually say at the beginning of the school year, I tell students, I say, listen, I show them, like I take class time the first or second day of school and show them how to log into their textbook. And we go through all of the different bells and whistles and all of that great stuff. And then I say to the students, and this is also included in their the syllabi, syllabus, I should say. If you need or would like a hard copy, I will sign one out to you for you to keep at home. And so, and that, and I tell them, I say, you can come back after school so nobody feels like they're put on the spot, and I even say, listen, if you learn better by physically having paper in your hand, or, if that helps you, because a lot of times I've had students come to me and they'll say, Ms. Proctor, we're in the process of moving, so we don't have the internet right now, or we're our internet is off, but we it's getting cut back on next week. A lot of times they don't want to say, listen, we don't have no internet. They come up with these reasons, but I give them the excuse to say, hey, you just like the book better. It's fine. But generally speaking, and I have to make those available, to the students,
But and just to put a button on it too, I find that even in my days where I was instructing the teachers, the newer books, especially those online books, the hard versions of the book are not as friendly to the students as the digital. But they make it now where it's not advantageous even to use, at least in the English department, I'll say, where now everything is so set up on the digital version. If you went and tried to do the hardback version, it would be so arduous to get through that it makes it where you're like, nah, that's okay. I just go to deal with the online because they've designed it that way, and that is where education is moving. And this was well before COVID, so I guess there was the setup, but I think COVID is going to streamline where now, being that students have to be at home and maybe they couldn't go in and get tech. Now you're probably going to see little to any from this point on hardback, solely hardback based curriculum, textbook, physical textbook based um curriculum.
And see, I'm the opposite. I prefer the hardback. I even with
But
like
we're
my
old school like that. We got that.
and like I said, I use the tech. Don't get me wrong, I use the technology, but I'm saying for my personal, even when I'm doing my lesson planning and stuff like that, I prefer to have the book in front of me that I can physically put my hands on things. That's just me, though. That's me. Anyway, um, do they use Pebble software? PEBL? I'm not familiar with that. Are you familiar with that, El
I'm
Teddy?
not. I'm not. I'm not offhand. I'll look. I maybe I've used it and just wasn't aware that I've used it. I'd have. Let me. I have to search and look. Um, give me a moment while I look and
Yeah,
see what that
yeah.
is.
I'm
But
gonna
go
be
ahead. You
honest.
can
I'm
introduce the
not
next
familiar at
topic.
all. All right. Cam said that's why I love conversations like these. So I gotta sneeze because the tax. Excuse me. Excuse me. Because the tax assessment increased yearly for education, so I want to make sure kids are getting the resources they need to be successful. And honestly, Cams, we need more people like that who pay attention to those kinds of things and who are going to ask the right questions and hold the right people accountable. So that's good. Thank you, Xavier. Do you guys use with Synergy? Is that Synergy or Cynegage? Cynegage? No. Mm-mm. I mean, are these what are these that y'all? Are these online like book systems? Are they like warehouse, like online
I'm
warehouse?
looking at the Pebble, and it stands for psychology experiment building language. Um,
Yeah, I'm not familiar. I have to
I'm looking
do
at
research.
it. This goes more into the this goes more into the systems, information systems, information how they actually set up the technologies. More often than not, and on the educational level, what happens is when we get it, they've already done it where it's just a click, 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 go here, go there, go here, go there.
Mhm.
Looking at this goes a lot into the nuts and bolts of the development of these online, textbooks or online platforms, and they may run on some version of that or some iteration of that, but it wouldn't be at the level where a teacher would be able to say, "Oh yeah, we use this," "Oh yeah," because basically, a school district or a state will adopt, something from this company, and that company will already have things set up, and that's a part of the process when you are doing the bidding and so forth from companies as they put in bids to be the you know, pub, to be the company where you get your book adopted from.
Right. Okay. Cam said it's personalized ebook for learning. No, we don't have
Oh,
no.
see, I looked at
We
something
just
else.
have
Okay.
our kids just have laptops. I mean, if that's what you're asking about. It's a website for online textbooks. It usually comes with teachers' lesson plans and notes. I've only used it once for college, and it was really helpful. Yeah, no, I'm not. No, we're not using that. Y'all are giving me some homework though.
Right, because I'm looking at a different pebble. See, I ain't even that what I looked at it, that didn't even come up. Okay, well we'll have to look into that because
Well,
I'm not familiar.
y'all give us homework, honey. Y'all give us homework, and I love it when y'all give us homework because it gives us something to research and come back up with. So we're gonna hold on. Where I put my notes? Remember, I've been keeping my notes, so let me write this down in my notes, and then we're gonna move on to the next topic. But we will revisit it, you guys. I'll do some research on it. El Teddy will look some stuff up, and we'll come back around to it. So moving into, and again, this is something that El Teddy and myself have both spoken on separately on our channels. I have two different articles that, again, I'm only going to read y'all um, the hot spots, and then we can dig deeper. So the first one is Ohio governor signs a non-discrimination education bill. Don't you love how it gives us this pretty name to try to hide what it really is? Anyway, Idaho Governor Brad Little late Wednesday signed. This is from the Associated Press, and this is dated April 28th. So again, this is very recent. Signed legislation aimed at preventing schools and universities from indoctrinating, and that's in parentheses, students through teaching.
Quotation mark.
That's what, thank you, because I did say parentheses, quotation marks. Students through teaching critical race theory, which examines the ways in which race and racism influence American politics, culture, and the law. The Republican governor signed the bill that allows teaching critical race theory, but prohibits forcing belief systems onto students that claim a group of people as defined by sex, race, ethnicity, or religion are inferior or superior to others. Now, here's the problem. The superior part ain't my problem. It's the inferior part. That's my problem. But let me read a little bit more and then we'll talk about it. The claim that there was a widespread systematic indoctrination occurring in Idaho classrooms as a serious allegation. Little wrote in the bill's transmittal letter addressed to Republican House Speaker Scott Beakey. Most worryingly,
Bedkey.
say it?
Bedkey.
Bedkey. Oh, I didn't pronounce the D. Okay. It undermines popular support for public education in Idaho. Some GOP lawmakers are concerned belief systems will be forced on Idaho students and wanted legislation addressing that concern before they will vote to approve a log jam of education budget bills that must be passed before the legislature can wrap up the session, now the third longest in state history. All right. Again, you guys can read the rest of that, and let me read you this second article, and this is a real easy one. This isn't going to take me long at all. And I talked about this a little bit yesterday. Lord, I can't read it's so little. Louisiana State Rep Ray Garofalo is making headlines this week for saying that public schools and universities in the state should be required to teach the good of slavery when discussing race as part of a bill he proposed to ban divisive concepts from classrooms in the latest GOP effort taking aim at how schools are allowed to teach about race. The Louisiana, okay. Yeah, y'all get it. Y'all get it. Elton? Do I just need to let you have the full screen?
No. Because I've ranted about this on my own channel over and over and over again. And what we have happening here is there is I did let me just say this. I knew that there would be pushback after the Obama administration. And what I mean by that is there would be pushback across these yet to be United States of America when you allow a black man to become president. I did not know, or I could not fathom that the pushback would be so great that we are now trying to push us back 150 years. That's what I think I could not fathom. I could not fathom where you are forcing now students to forget history and where you're trying to basically act as if nothing to see here, act as if, oh, the America didn't do anything here. It would be akin to just saying, oh, if Germany said, oh, Hitler didn't exist, we're just going to act like, the Holocaust never happened. It would be like England trying to say, oh, colonialism didn't exist. We're just going to act like none of that happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't. And so you have coupled with, and that's why I say we get fixated on one thing, whereas the opposing side is their net is wide reaching and wide ranging, and they've thought this thing out to the nth level because they're hitting us with voter suppression, they're hitting us with anti-protesting laws, and then they're hitting us at the education level where now they're telling you you can't teach about slavery. Now they're telling you you can't say that America was wrong or did black people wrong because they want to start it from the very most base level, from the foundational level. So now you're passing laws and making it illegal to tell the truth. That's essentially what's going on. And that goes against the very premise of education. Education is built on fact. Education is built on science and so forth. And now you're making it illegal to truly provide sound education. You are making it illegal to tell the truth.
Sorry.
And there goes the whole superstructure that is education in these yet to be United States. Mind you, mind you, it's a very well known fact. We are way behind the rest of the civilized world with regard to our educational standards and with regard to where education pedagogy should be. But I mean, I could go on and on, but that's where this is. That is basically, and this, let's be clear, this is directed toward Black people first. And so what's going to happen is you're going to have children that are going to not learn real history. And we know how kids can be sometimes. They say, nope, my teacher told me this, so that got to be true. And now you as parent that might know the truth is going, no, that's not. And they be like, no, that I go to school because that's where I'm supposed to learn history. And the school they say it happened, that ain't really what happened. That's so, it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. And I'm gonna finish with this. It's dangerous not only what it's doing to our students of color and Black children. It's dangerous what it does for those students descended from the whose parents and are descended from the Caucasus Mountains, our white counterparts. Because what it does is it continues to perpetuate the supremacy and the white privilege that they have and are so beholden to. It makes them feel like, oh, there's nothing wrong with what I'm feeling. There's nothing wrong with what we're doing. There's nothing wrong with how things are. This is how it was designed. This is how it was supposed to be. So why should I think that I'm doing anything wrong by thinking that I shouldn't be or have these advantages that I have? It's dangerous. I'm sorry, I went on and on, but this kind of stuff is very dangerous, and I'm afraid of what it means.
There's there's a famous quote that is attributed to Abraham Lincoln that says, "We must study history, lest we repeat it." If we continue to want to think back on history with rose-colored glasses, then what will happen is we will repeat what has already happened. Like you said, a perfect example is the Holocaust. We will never be allowed to forget the Holocaust. And I'm not mad about it. I'm not mad about it. Because the atrocities and the fact that when the Holocaust happened, Hitler got away with it for so long because the rest of the world could not wrap their brain around what was being told to them about what Hitler was actually doing. And it wasn't until those soldiers went into Germany and Poland and saw the evidence in front of them. Let's remember that our own country turned away German immigrants, Jewish immigrants who were begging for someplace to stay, And so earlier this week, President Biden was the first president to ever acknowledge the Armenian genocide. And why is that important? Because it lends legitimacy to what happened. As long as world leaders wanted to continue to ignore what happened, then there's no legitimacy to it. Same thing with Rwanda. I know I'm older than you will, Teddy, but this was like while I was in, like maybe right after I got out of college, there seemed to be a slew. I mean, we had Hotel Rwanda, but we also had other movies that were like HB straight to H. I remember Idris Elba was in one. There seemed to be a slew of movies that came out and documentaries that came out about Rwanda. And so many people were like, I didn't know anything about this. Or I heard a little bit about it, but we didn't understand the gravity. No, I wasn't in college. I'm sorry. It happened while I was in college. The movies came out later. But because I remember saying to myself, I was conscious at the time. We were all about fighting apartheid and all that other stuff that was going on. How do we freaking miss this? We missed it because nobody was teaching it. And I know I'm going off on a tangent, but y'all know that this is my heart. Y'all know that this is what I do. I love history. I love teaching history. I love giving not just students, but adults that aha moment. I still get compliments about things that I have, quote unquote, taught people, even on my YouTube channel, which ain't even about history. You understand what I'm saying? And it scares me, but it also saddens me that we are seeing this trend, because we've talked about Florida. Like, this isn't just,
Right. This is sweeping.
right. This isn't in isolation. And so it scares me a lot.
Texas is doing it.
Yeah,
Mississippi
Texas,
is doing it.
yeah, Miss, yeah,
Louisiana is doing it. You have Idaho. Florida is doing it. I've already seen the groundwork for it in Georgia. I know the Carolinas are right up the alley, and it's not. There's so many things, and I know this wasn't on our agenda, really, but you touched on it a little bit about Rwanda happening when you were in college. A lot of times, some of these things are brought to light by young people doing research or hearing about things. And so, college universities and college campuses were the foundation of a lot of information coming out about some of these atrocities that were happening across the globe that people just were not privy to because they were consumed with work and family life and so forth. Whereas you may have these group of college students that are focusing on just learning and opening up their minds. And so the college campus became the hotbed of getting these information because you would have protests. But now I talked about it on my live earlier this week. We have legislation being passed around the country that saying it's going to be illegal for colleges to have protests on their campuses now, which some colleges were built based on, look at the California colleges, UCLA and USC, and what that did for many movements. Um, so I can't hear you. I don't know if it's just me. Maybe I need to go out and come back in. Oh, you was on mute. Okay, okay.
sorry, I forgot I had muted something.
Oh, okay.
Listen, look, it's me.
Oh, okay. No, but what I'm saying is we're not just for the country, but especially in education, we are looking at what could be very dangerous times in education, both K through 12, as well as in on the university post-secondary education. And what I'm going to do to is this:
Excuse
if
me.
it starts in K through 12, the last frontier is post-secondary education, because even if you're stifled on really learning the truth or learning what really happened, getting a real sound education in K through 12, when you get to post-secondary education, you get to some of these college campuses and university, that's where a lot of students become like, oh, they didn't teach me this. Oh, I didn't really know that. Oh, so when you start to dictate that you can't even provide sound instruction and education, because the Idaho bill is not just for K through 12. They're saying for colleges and universities as well. And so I'm sure that's a part of the state college and university system, because they can't, dictate that on the for private colleges and so forth. But let's be clear, a lot of students, I don't know the numbers, but a lot of students, a good number of students, I don't want to say majority because I don't have those numbers, but a good number of students do go to state university systems, state college and university systems. And so what I'm saying about that is once those states starts to say, we're not going to give you sound, true, real education, even on the college level, now this stuff, that's how they rewrite history permanently.
Yeah.
And so now what is true history looks like it's not the real history.
Yeah, like I said, it's scary. As someone who does this for a living, um, it's just a scary thought that, and what I'm gonna tell you what scares me the most, for lack of a better word. I hate keep using the same adjective, but what does scare me the most is the pretty names they're putting on it. Nondiscrimination Act. What was the one in Florida had a pretty name too, right? I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it had that pretty name. And so on its surface, if you see something in casual reading that says oh, Idaho passed the Non-Discrimination Act, your first thought is, oh, that was great. And then you read about it and you're like, whoa, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing in Miami, when we did that story on Miami, it was in the last, it was the last one we did when we talked about Miami. The title for the one in Miami was one of those like real pretty titles too. And you know, again, so to the outside person who doesn't dig deep, they're like, oh, that's so great. That's great. Like to be able to fix your lips to even say, well, they should be teaching the good things about slavery. And what, pray tell, would that be, sir? The name slavery itself would indicate that there's nothing good happening here. There's nothing good happening here. Slavery. So anyway, you guys, again, I implore you, like Cam said
and I know we're already 46 minutes. We're getting to the good parts. You know what really? I'm like, I hate because listen, it's getting so I love because we've been on here together so long, and so we're getting into this good stuff. But I'm like, yes, I'm nerding out.
The sad come back around to it, because I still have a friend of mine who I want to come and speak on this topic. She's an educator as well, and I want her to come and speak on it. So we're definitely going to. Y'all know we're not no one-stop shop. We are not a one. So, but we do try to stick to our promise, and we do want to get to this Biden situation. Now, y'all know that I'm a Biden.
Well, no, before we get to Biden, we got to address my hometown. Oh no, we said we were going to address my hometown last.
So. Again, this is an article I'm reading from dispatch.com. Grading Biden's first 100 days in education. Now, last night Biden did speak on his first 100 days. So let's just talk. Now, what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to read this whole article because
but we could talk, but they had like 4 major areas.
That's right. I was going to go through the 4 categories. So the article talks about Biden's first 100 days. It talks about what he promised. And I'm going to read to you guys. The article they graded him broken down into 4 sections. So section number 1 was school reopening. A majority of school districts remain at least partially closed over a year into the pandemic, despite the widespread availability of vaccines, the vast majority of educators having been fully vaccinated for well over a month. And evidence just demonstrating that students learn better and have better mental, emotional health when they're in school. Now, on this one, I give Biden an A because, I don't think we're ready to open schools back up. The reason why, let me finish reading. Despite all of this, Biden's push to reopen schools has been half-hearted and lacking in urgency. That's what I mean by I give him an A, because I'm okay with it being half-hearted and lacking in urgency because schools ain't ready to open.
But the reason that I'm giving him F is because it's not about what I wanted. It's about what he intended to do. And so my point is when I tell you to write an essay and you give me your thesis statement for that essay, that whole essay is supposed to prove that thesis statement. And when you told me this is what you were intending to do, and you do none of that by the end of the essay, I don't care how great your language is. I don't care how colorful you make it, even though, and it could have disproven the thesis statement. And I might like that you disprove because I didn't like the thesis statement in the beginning, but your job was to prove your thesis statement. And to me, he said that by the first 100 days, he wanted to have all of this so forth with schools reopening. Whether or not I think, because I, with you, really don't think that schools need to be reopened yet. However, he said this is what he wanted to do. And if I'm judging him on what he was trying to do, I'm going to give him an F. He was so flippy. It's so wishy-washy with education right now. Like I don't see a clear-cut plan or a clear-cut direction with regard to education. I don't know if it's Biden's fault. I don't know if it's Cardona's fault. I don't know whose fault it is. But what I do know is we should not be as willy-nilly just playing it by ear with education as we are, especially with this. And one of the things they talked about was him kowtowing to teachers unions, which is not a bad thing because they are the experts, but you need to accept, you know how teachers unions are. We could be very pushy. We could be very, say it's our way or the highway. And sometimes even with the union, you have to say, nope, this is what we're doing. You come along or it's not gonna work out. So
I
I'm
guess
giving them F.
I mean I hear what you're saying. I guess we're just looking at it differently. I'm glad you didn't do it. You weren't able to be successful. But I understand your explanation though.
You
I
wanted him to get the F. You wanted him not to make it happen.
No, because listen, I was mad when he said he wanted schools to open up in 100 days because I was like, what the
That's
heck?
my point.
Yeah.
That's my
Okay.
point. You didn't want it to go through because I didn't think that was smart. I thought it would have been smart if he said for next fall. I
Yeah,
would like, you know what I'm saying? Once
absolutely.
we get all of the vaccines and stuff in, but you went way out there.
Okay. The proposed student debt jubilee. Before Biden even took office, progressive activists were pressing him to use executive action to forgive $50,000 per borrower in student loan debt. To his credit, Biden has usefully pushed back a bit. In December, Biden observed that the president probably lacks the legal authority to forgive student loan debt. At a CNN town hall in February, Biden reiterated his opposition to forgiving student loan $50,000, arguing the government shouldn't forgive loans for those who attend Harvard and Yale, which I don't understand why. Just because I went to Harvard and Yale don't mean one
You
that
don't
don't mean
even
I
need to
have a
read
good
no more
job.
for me.
One
You don't
that
even need to read no more for me.
Right. One, that doesn't mean I have a good job, and two, that don't mean I don't have debt. Like just because I have a good job, still like let's not forget Barack Obama did not pay off his student loan debt until like 5 years before he became president. When he got the advance from his first book. Hello? Just because you went to Harvard does not mean that you are financially comfortable. Like, anyway, let me finish reading this. Biden has, however, heartily endorsed less ambitious debt forgiving. In January, he called on Congress to forgive $10,000 for all borrowers, even those who went to Harvard or Yale. He's hinted that he's willing to forgive even more, even though blanket debt forgiveness or whatever amount would be disproportionately benefit the affluent, give colleges an excuse to hike prices, and tempt students to borrow even more. Now, I don't know. I don't understand that, but okay. The grade that the article gave him is a C minus. I give him a F. What do you give him?
F.
Yeah.
Because I don't even understand that statement that it will make colleges hike prices because first of all, most of the college debt is not being paid directly to those colleges. They're
Right.
being paid to, banks or other companies that work in student loans. So it wouldn't even affect colleges and how they operate or the monies that colleges get. So that whole I don't maybe I'm missing something and I am not an economics expert by any stretch of the imagination. So if y'all want to school me on this, please do. But I don't even understand that statement. Secondly,
Fool me too, because I don't get it either.
I really feel like this was one of those things that Biden agreed to give a nod to the progressives. He said, okay, yeah, I'll agree to that just to make the progressives feel okay. And so he can garner their votes. But I really don't feel like he had really any true intentions of doing anything with this. And I think that he's surprised that the progressives are pushing hard on those issues that they said that they meant, that they were not yielding on this $15 minimum wage and some other things. The progressives are coming at him hard about. And so, and I don't think he anticipated it being, those in his party coming at him this hard about certain things. Like they are still harping on where's the $15, where's this student loan debt, forgiveness, and that's why I think there's you see him kind of this is another situation where he's just meandering around like, oh well maybe 10,000, well maybe if you went anywhere but Harvard and Yale and stuff like that. I'll be like, but what if I went to Princeton, which might be as just as expensive, or some other private schools that are just as expensive. I guess whatever. I don't know. I don't know. F.
All right. The next category is the culture war. Do I even need to read this? Because I mean, after what we just talked about,
F. And let me tell you why it's an F. Really be it's an F because he and his administration is doing nothing to push against it. They're not saying anything about it. They're not ringing the alarm about what these states are doing, rewriting history and getting rid of sound education. They're just sitting there. They're not doing anything. And then you got this slew of laws that are going with regard to there's the whole trans laws about students, trans students and so forth that's going all around the country. And there's a whole lot of things that is going on and it's like they can't chew gum and walk at the same time because they would lead you to believe, oh, we got to worry about this, and this. But the other side seems to be able to do everything all at one time. Like they could do, they can do it all, but y'all can't do it all. Like I don't understand.
yeah. The article gave him a D minus. I'm just gonna give him an F. I'm just gonna give him an F. Spending. Before Biden took office, Congress had already earmarked nearly $70 billion in emergency COVID aid to K through 12 schools. As of February 21st, most of the money still hadn't been spent. As the Wall Street Journal editorial board dryly noted, it's hard to spend money when schools aren't open for classroom instruction, since unions have resisted returning to work in much of the country. No comment. But Biden doubled down in his American Rescue Plan, providing $130 billion more in additional K through 12 aid. For reference, that's double what the federal government typically spends a year on K through 12 school. Meanwhile, states are already so swamped with relief money that it may be years before Biden's bailout is fully spent. The Congressional Budget Office, for instance, estimates that nearly half of Biden's emergency COVID K through 12 aid will be spent between 2014 and 2018. On top of that, Biden proposed budget calls for a massive 41% increase in federal K through 12 aid. Well, I got a question. If there's so much damn money out there, how come my school said they couldn't afford to give us PPE? How come the extent of my PPE when I went back in the building was a bag of a generic mask, a bottle of hand sanitizer, a bottle of wipes, and some spray for my desk? They told us they couldn't even afford to put a shield on our desk. So if there's so much money floating around, this article I feel is a little biased. And I also feel like this information may not be accurate. Because again, I work in a school system that was like, yeah, we ain't got money for that. Now, it may not be trickling down, and that's fine. I can't speak for that. But I know that you talking about that they got more money that they're not going to be able to spend until the next 4 years. That's bullshit. I call bullshit on that.
I call bullshit on it too because when what? There's so many places. Even if you said they're not going to put it into um the PPE and all of that, you know what they could put it into? They could put it in the salaries. You know what they could put it into? The fact that there's a shortage of teachers across the fruited plains. And when you eventually do get kids back in the classroom, how you going to facilitate this the numbers because you already are at a shortage and we ain't even fully 100% back in the classroom yet. So y'all talk about going back in the classroom. Y'all don't even have the teachers to facilitate this. We just talked about infrastructure. We just talked about infrastructure.
I don't think people right. First of all, infrastructure. Like you sitting here telling me that schools don't know where to spend that money when they got all this damn infrastructure. That's bull hockey. Number two, I don't think people realize how bad the teacher shortage is right now. We already had a teacher shortage before COVID. We've got a lot of teachers that are like, I will quit before I go back in the classroom. We have teachers that are retiring, and I hate to state the obvious and be morbid, but we lost a lot of teachers during this pandemic as well. I remember a friend of mine living in New York saying, we don't even know if schools will be ready to open up because the need is so great for people in the school system, not just teachers, but on all levels, because we lost so many people. And so you're not going to sit here. There's never been a situation where schools had too much money. Ever. So I don't know. I call bullshit on that part of the article. I'm not mad at Biden.
And what I hope and what I hope didn't happen is I hope they didn't just throw money at it and say, okay, here's some money, y'all do what y'all need to do with schools. I hope I would pray that there were parameters and different structures in place to say this is earmarked for this, and this. Now, if that is the case, and there are things earmarked for certain things, then I could see maybe where they say, well, they haven't spent it yet because school systems or districts haven't allocated it for the right places or whatever parameters or provisos that are in place to make these things happen. But I do think that to a certain degree there was a okay, here's some money to make it look like we're trying to solve the problem, and now where is the accountability for that money? That is, I think, where because you know how a state will do. Oh, you sent money for education. Well, let me put it over here, and I'll write one sentence in whatever bill or legislation that makes it sound like it's for education, and it never goes to the schools.
Hey, listen, Cams, it ain't for the faint of heart, baby. It ain't for the faint of heart. Listen, I feel the same way. Now, if you say to me that states are mismanaging this money that was earmarked for schools, oh yeah, I'm gonna go with you on that all day long. They do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I'll give you that. But don't sit here and tell me that these school districts have so much money
that they just sitting on money that they ain't using.
That's bullshit. I ain't never met a principal that don't know how to spend money. I ain't never met a superintendent that don't know how to spend money. And you will very seldom hear that sentence come out of any educator's mouth. We had too much money. Now, there might be money that was earmarked for something that they didn't need it for, but I promise you can slide it over. Part of the problem, though, is a lot of times they write this legislation so specific that it's hard to move the money into places. Like, so for example, if the money was marked for COVID PPE, but the school really does need to replace the pipes, let's say, they may not allow them to use that money for that, but don't act like the school don't need the money for something else.
Right. It's just but overall, my overall grade for Biden in education in the first 100 days is F. I'm not saying that he can't recover, but I don't think, and I'm not saying Biden has to be out there, but Cardona, I need to see you out there. I need to see you. I don't think they're working as hard in the Department of Education as they are in other departments. You know what I'm saying? We've seen, other departments come out and say, this is what we're doing. I ain't seen nothing really roll out on education. I ain't really seen nothing hardline, no hardline stance, nothing that they can rest on the first 100 days. Nothing. There's been nothing in the first 100 days.
Quintessential, I might need to call you, girl. She talking about something. A lot of teachers are going into instructional design. Well, I need to listen. Maybe I need to do some research on instructional design. Anyway, so we will definitely revisit these. I agree. Biden will get a D- from me.
Because you're going to be the nice teacher. I'm the hard teacher.
I mean, but with a D-, you still don't move on to the next grade. So, I mean.
Watch this. I'm more upset at a student that gets a D- than I am at the F student. Because the F student, no child, I was going to get this out. The D-, you tried. You tried. And you got this good D-. You know what?
Moving on. So last but not least, we're going to end on a good note. Well, it's still sad, but funny note, I should say. And this comes from the great state of Florida, from El Teddy's hometown of Miami. Let me read this to you. Look.
Wow, that's what we're doing? That's what we're doing?
A private school in Miami.
Dear Lord. Lord.
A private school in Miami citing false claims bars vaccinated teachers from contact with students. Let me read the article because I had to listen. I read that headline probably 4 times before I read the article. Let me read the article. A private school in the fashionable design district of Miami sent its faculty and staff a letter. This was April 26th, by the way, so this was just happened. Sent a letter last week about getting vaccinated against COVID-19. But unlike institutions that have encouraged and even facilitated vaccination for students, the school Center Academy did the opposite. One of its co-founders, Layla Center, informed employees with a very heavy heart, that is in quotation marks, that if they choose to get a shot, they would have to stay away from students. In an example of how misinformation threatens the nation's efforts to vaccinate enough Americans to get the coronavirus under control, Ms. Center, who has frequently shared anti-vaccine posts on her Facebook, claimed in a letter that reports have surfaced recently of non-vaccinated people being negatively impacted by interacting with people who have been vaccinated. Y'all, this paragraph right here is what's going to do it for you. This one right here. Buckle up, Buttercup. Even among our own population, we have at least 3 women.
I'm just gonna hold my head down in shame.
I'm sorry. Y'all, I'm trying to get through this. Hold on. Even among our own population, we have at least 3 women with menstrual cycles impacted after having spent time with a vaccinated person. Repeating a false claim that vaccinated people can somehow pass the vaccine to others and therefore affect their reproductive systems. In this letter, Ms. Center gave employees 3 options. 1, inform the school if they had already been vaccinated so they could be kept physically distanced from students. 2, let the school know if they get the vaccine before the end of the school year, as we cannot allow recently vaccinated people to be around our students until more information is known.
Help us,
3,
Jesus.
wait until the school year is over to get vaccinated. Teachers who get the vaccine over the summer will not be allowed to return. The letter said until clinical trials on the vaccine are completed, and then only if a position is still available at the time, effectively making teachers' employment contingent upon avoiding the vaccine. I'm sorry.
So basically, they said the ladies got bust down by somebody who was vaccinated, and that affected their reproduction. I'm just making sure that I'm clear. That's what they're saying, right? You went and got bust down by somebody because when you went and decided to have this whole romp and hey, you said, let me see your COVID vaccine, card. Okay, you vaccinated. Okay, we can do this. You went and got bust down, and now that's affecting your reproductive, process. I'm just, this is the very same school, mind you, where it's illegal for them to have students on campus that haven't gotten, the other vaccines.
No, this is a real article. This was in the New
Oh,
York.
no. Oh, I know it's a real. Oh, I know it's real.
real
That's what I'm saying. Oh, it's a real article. Oh, no, it's real. It's for real, for real. Mind you, students cannot go to school without getting vaccinated. So you telling people, oh, you got vaccinated, you about to lose your job. You about to lose your job. You about to lose your job. Wait, what? This, you know what? I wouldn't even bother going to court for litigation on this. I would be like, I can't even work for someplace like this.
Listen, how
are you sending your child to a school like that? That's them Cubans down there, Mike. I guarantee you that's them Cubans down there in Miami. It makes sense.
Okay. Well, people, we wanted to leave you on that note. I will definitely include the links. Give me a few minutes, but I will include the links to these articles because the article doesn't stop there. I need you to know.
Oh, it keeps going. It gets worse.
The article continues. There's a quote from her publicist and everything, okay? I stopped there. I would definitely make sure that the articles that we talked about today are in the description box. Like I said, give me a few minutes to get them in there.
Literally, both of us are fully vaccinated, and so now we are not eligible to work at this place. I just want you to, neither one of us are eligible to teach at this fine institution.
With that being said, thank y'all for being here.
Where do they find these people?
The sad thing is that her and her husband started a school and are actually running a school. Like, that is the sad part, is that there are somebody's children. That's a K through 12 school, meaning, listen, like, real talk, potentially a child could be indoctrinated in this mindset for their whole academic career. Dr. L. Teddy, I will let you have the final word, sir.
Be vigilant, people, in the fight. Never get weary in well-doing. There's a lot going on. Stay informed. Always be learning. Myself, Everly B, are always learning. Y'all already told us we got to do homework on Pebble. I saw somebody put Cengage in there. I am familiar with Cengage, but I'm not familiar with Pebble. So now we are going to be learning. Y'all know we love to learn some stuff. Y'all know. Right. And so you should always be a consummate and perpetual learner in your life, because it just helps you grow. Just helps you grow. So, but like I said, always, even if you don't have a child, even if you don't know anybody that's still in school, understand that students end up becoming citizens of these yet to be United States. So you should always be concerned with what they're learning and what's being put out there to them. Okay. Yes. I can't wait till we come back. Yeah.
We'll be here next week. Thank you guys so much. I definitely want to thank Quintessential, who always shares us in her other professional groups. I really appreciate the support. I really appreciate anybody who spreads the word, shares the link, shares the information. That is what we are here for. We want to try to increase our visibility and get to the masses, because I feel like we provide some really, really great information here, and we have a good time doing it. So please make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Please make sure that, if you listen to podcasts on iTunes or Google Play or Spotify, we are there. Go ahead and give us a subscribe, even though you over here. Go on and just, get our numbers up so we can get our visibility out. And with that being said, Cams, thank you so much for being here. Cams be giving it to us. He always brings some great information. And I appreciate that your activism and your thoughtfulness throughout all of it. With that being said, everybody have a great day, and I will see y'all later.